Thanks for having me. Let me just see if I can get this opened up quickly. There we go. Cool. Well, firstly, quick introduction. I am Alex. I run ops from an Aragon perspective, and yeah, Paul, thanks for inviting us on. Really appreciate it. Obviously, so Aragon has been around since 2017, building essentially tools that allow organizations to exist on chain. Over the last couple of years, we've really been pushing forwards with a new protocol, OSX, which essentially the goal of OSX has been to allow a much more modular framework for organizations to govern themselves on chain. I'm not going to dive into like the deep like contracts, right, like at the contract level from an OSX perspective, but I've got a demo of an essentially an example of what OSX can power for an organization. So yeah, we've really been focusing over the past few years on moving into a much more modular framework. So DAOs that are built on the old tech stack, I think Lido would be obviously the biggest one, and Curve. And then on the new tech stack on OSX, we have projects like Tyco, Katana, Boundless, Stakehouse are all using Aragon in some regard to power a piece of their governance. What I will do is I will show you the app. The Aragon app. So essentially we have two different core components. We have OSX, which is the base of smart contracts, and then we have Aragon app, which sits on top, which is the essentially no code application that allow organizations to build complex governance on chain without having to go through essentially launching their own smart contracts. So when we're looking at projects that want to build on top of Aragon, we have sort of two options. We have people can build a plugin on top of OSX and then build their own custom front end, and we have essentially a UI kit to help projects build their own front ends, or they can essentially work with us and we can work with projects on putting plugins into the Aragon app if those projects that want to use them, and open them up to all organizations. But let me give you a quick run through. So essentially OSX works at the base layer. It's a super simple set of smart contracts. So OSX at the base is essentially a simple contract that you then add plugins on top of, which can essentially manage different things. The simplest example would be either token voting as a plugin, or we have a multi-sig plugin. And then we have a plugin which allows those plugins to interact and do multi-body, multi-stage governance. So if I dive into essentially a DAO that we have, this is an example on testnet. Organization, obviously we know that organizations have different processes or different flows, and they want to add things like optimistic governance, they want to add things like time locks, but they don't want to be bouncing around to be able to do those. So essentially what we allow in the app is for projects to have different what we call bodies. So essentially you can create committees which are multi-sigs. You can create things, these are all just essentially multi-sigs here, or then you can have token holders, and then you can have supermajority, so you can set essentially a body that allows like supermajority to vote on upgrades. So for example, minting in this process, so each process is standalone. This one is a supermajority process, so essentially you need a supermajority to be able to upgrade or mint new tokens, so 66%. Then what we have if we were to say doing this project wants to do protocol upgrade, so essentially upgrade the smart contracts, we have essentially the core team puts forward a proposal and a multi-sig. It then goes to community review, so this is token holders voting over 50%. And then, for example, this one is time lock. So essentially, the reason we put this in is if, say, an upgrade is going through that people disagree with, they have time to essentially exit the protocol. And then finally, we have, say, grants. Good example. We have you can add multiple bodies within one stage. So, for example, this would be distributing grants. So you could have a committee, and then you can have an external body like a SAFE as well. So you could have two different bodies that essentially are approving grants, for example. So that's just a few very quick examples of what you can do from a governance perspective. We then also have been helping projects now move into the more capital allocation. So we recently did capital distribution with Boundless. So essentially, we're now allowing projects to distribute capital. And we have a new plugin coming into the app as well, which is going to be VE again. So we're thinking about the full life cycle of a project. We don't want projects to have to move around. We want them to be able to essentially come to one place and be able to evolve without migrating and minimizing the risks as they sort of grow their organization. So maybe from launching a protocol with a multi-sig, moving all the way up into essentially doing decentralization and becoming a full DAO. But we understand that people can't launch often a DAO at the very beginning, and this allows them to progressively decentralize over time. We also have been pushing privacy as well. So we just did a partnership with Macy, and they launched essentially a private voting plugin on top of OSX. So this is one thing that we would love to look more into. So we've already done some work with Macy on this, but essentially, yeah, we would love if people have ideas on private voting. This would be like we would really like to push this forward as well. So we did essentially this would be an example of a plugin that's built on top of OSX, which then allows private voting. It's not in the app yet, but if someone wants to use it, I'm sure we could push forward. So that just gives you a very quick overview of essentially Aragon and where we're at from like a product perspective. Obviously, we have had a large number of DAOs, and we want to continue supporting DAOs. So we have essentially a full documentation suite that I can send out, which talks people through on how to build plugins on top of OSX, and then also list the plugins that we have already built. So the stage proposals, admin, multi-sig, and token voting. So those are the sort of the five core ones at the moment. And then we also are going to have the governance marketplace where people can put their own plugins on top of. And then for anyone else, UI kit and the app template. Sorry, I don't know where I am or if there's any questions, but that should give you a very quick overview of where we're at from a product perspective. So obviously, yeah, we're looking at helping projects distribute capital. So whether that be grants or distributing to projects or token holders, or whether that be projects that want to do voting on upgrades and how they want to manage that voting. We can do much more customizable processes for projects now using the app or using OSX. So if people have ideas on what they want to build from a voting / capital allocation perspective, we'd love to work with people on that.
Nice. Yeah, I've noticed in at least a couple of the existing proposals already, I saw voting weight strategies and things that were proposed as a new governance platform. And it seems like there is a lot of space, especially with Aragon OSX, to instead of creating a new platform from scratch, taking a new strategy or some new improvement to DAO decision making and plugging it into an existing platform that's has already done most of the legwork of governance outside of like a specific improvement that you might be working on. So yeah, I think
100%. And then anyone who wants to do a new novel way of governing, we've also done some work on, for example, another plugin we built was a multi-sig which had 2 thresholds. So if it hit one threshold that was private, and if it hit another threshold that became public, for example. So lower threshold voting if they wanted to push something through public towards token holders, and then a higher threshold if they wanted to keep something private. So we can do things like that as well. So we can do some super interesting governance plugins. If people have ideas with governance, but they don't want to build a full governance platform, yeah, we'd love to chat with people and help out.
Very nice. Any questions?
These links in the chat.
Yeah, of course, can. I'll ping them all in. And nice. Start speaking next.
Yeah, I'm gonna be diving in later today. This is cool. Awesome. Any questions from the chat? Feel free to just put it in the chat and Alex to respond there. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, Alex, and presenting.
Thanks for having me.